what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. Welcome back to Talkin Ball. I'm sitting in for Bobby Burton. Usually he was here with my man, Jerry Hamilton, the estimable Jerry Hamilton. So I'm sitting in tonight because I appreciate Jerry giving me the opportunity. You guys know how it works. We'll dive into a few topics. And, of course, we'll start out talking a little Texas baseball. I know that's top of mind for all you Longhorn fans out there. We'll get into the Longhorns teams. Now they're hosting in their regional. The Longhorns, the number 2 overall seed in the tournament, and we'll talk about that coming up, and also dive into some recruiting nuggets a little bit, talk about edge recruiting a little bit, a little D-line recruiting, but of course, whatever you guys want to talk about, that's pretty much what drives the show. You got a question, you got a comment, you got something you want Jerry's expertise on, you got something you want to get my opinion on, throw it out there. We're happy to address it. Happy Memorial Day for everybody out there who's joining us. We really appreciate you guys joining us on a holiday edition of Talkin Ball. We know there are other things you could do. Holidays are usually about family, and we're happy you could be a part of our own Texas football family. All right, Jerry. Remember, Super Chat jump to the front line. You want to interrupt the show and stop what we're talking about, throw out a Super Chat, and we will do just that. So we appreciate you as well there. But Texas baseball today found out where they were seeded. Ultimately, the number 2 overall seed, Jerry. But, man, that SEC slate, you got, I believe, 6 of the top 8 seeds are from the SEC. 13 total teams from the SEC. That is also a new NCAA record. I believe the 6 of the top 8 seeds is also an NCAA record for a conference in the postseason. That doesn't include the Aggies, so you feel free to take a shot at the Aggies if you want to. But the Longhorns with I think most people believe, pretty favorable regional. Thank you very much, Matthew. That's why he's the best in the business. But there you go. Texas will take on Houston Christian to start out, but K-State and UTSA also in that regional.
Yeah, look, it's Houston Christian to open up. Not a very good offensive team. So they've lost. In fact, they've lost, I think, to the majority of Power 4 teams they've played this year. They also lost to UTSA. Obviously, UTSA, really good team. Really good offensive team. Beat Texas in a midweeker earlier in the season. So if that's where it ends up, look, for those that maybe don't keep up game to game with Texas baseball, UTSA is a legitimate team.
Yeah,
you have to play well against those guys. They're a quality offensive team, and those are the ones that scare you if they get hot with the bats for a couple of games in a row. But that's Nathan. We're gonna get to Richard Wesley here shortly on his OV. That recruitment's going to play out a while. But yeah, so I mean, look, Houston Christian, favorable first game. UTSA, the favorite over K-State. Not saying they're for sure going to win. If it comes up, that road record for UTSA, impressive as well. If it gets to that game, obviously Texas pitching is going to be at a premium because UTSA can score runs. They're a very good offensive baseball team. So that's it's a good draw for Texas. But you got to go out and you're going to have to go out and earn it. That's for sure. UTSA will have confidence, Rod. They beat Texas. I don't care if it's a midweek or not. That's a team that'll sit across from the dugout in the other dugout from you and say, we can win that game.
Yeah.
Got to play really well.
Yeah, they believe they can beat you because they have done it. So I'm with you on that. And also, shout out to Blake Monroe, does a great job at Blake Monroe OTF. He put out the RPIs for the 4 teams in the Austin Regional. Texas, number 4, UTSA 25. To Jerry's point, K-State 37, Houston Christian 91st in the country in RPI. So, I mean, so of all we're talking about essentially the most disappointing season, though, even though we talked about Texas, but the most disappointing season maybe in college baseball history when you do look at the Aggies, it being official now, they are not in the tournament. Most people projected that would be the case, but there is reports from Aggie land from Texas that Michael Early is expected to be kept around as the baseball coach. I think that's a wise decision, by the way. It's not enough of sample size, and it was such a chaotic transition of power. I just don't know if it's fair for anybody to be, judged totally by that. Even the Aggies. So maybe he's not just suited for the job. Maybe he is. I just think you got to give him, to be reasonable, you got to give him one more shot without the chaos of that. That was arguably the most, chaotic. And it honestly,
we've seen it in college
duplicitous, snag or acquisition for any college baseball program ever. I mean, it's in that conversation. I don't think it's fair to judge Michael early on that. It is very disappointing to go from number one, now you're making the tournament. Never happened before in the history of college baseball. I still think it might be a wise decision to keep him around, considering what the severance spending is.
I was going to say, it's also a sign of the times in College Station. They don't have what they consider the war chest they're willing to spend because they're still paying out so many other contracts, especially Jimbo's contract. Their payouts are much, much more than the other SEC teams. So probably part of it, if they weren't paying out $25 million a year in other salaries, they might pull the plug. Because normally when you make hire off emotion, you try to eat players instead of making the best baseball hire in your mind, then that normally doesn't work out. We kind of saw that in Texas basketball a little bit with RT. And I think it could be the inevitable is the same. But I will say this, RT still got to the tournament and won a game.
He did.
Michael Early went from number one to missing the tournament. That normally gets you fired unless your university doesn't want to spend the jack. Even though it's not a big buyout, it would still add to the tab. And then you have to fire the assistant, and you have to
hire a new guy,
coach, all those salaries. Everybody's going to be commanding big money. You just missed your guy. You fired him after 1 year. So here I have all the leverage in the world if you want to hire me. So it makes a little sense. South Carolina didn't make it, and they retained their coach. South Carolina, one of the storied programs the last 25 years of college baseball, and then Missouri, obviously, the other school that didn't make it. For those that the college golf fans out there, Texas advances to match play. I think they're going to finish sixth. They came in seeded fourth. They're finishing sixth. Tommy Morrison had one bad round. I think he shot a 78 one round. Kind of kept Texas down a little bit there, but he's rebounded. Texas will play Florida. So got Florida in softball, got Florida in match play in golf. And it'll be interesting to see there who's the 2 seed, because the winner of the 3-6 Texas Florida will play the 2-7 winner. It looks like that 7 maybe Florida State, but they're still jockeying there at the end. Could even be Virginia. But the 2, you don't want Auburn on your side. And Arizona State and Auburn are tied at like 13 under with 2 holes to play. You want Arizona State. You don't want Auburn in the semis of golf. If you play Auburn, you want to play those guys for all the marbles, because they're really, really good, the defending champs. I think they have the best collegiate player in the game. So there's that. Softball, obviously, in the World Series, have Florida. So a lot going on in the 40. Before we get into recruiting, football staff taking a few days off. Bobby's not here because he's in Destin. SEC meetings, spring meetings tomorrow. Greg Sankey to the mic. Steve Sarkisian to the mic. Bobby will have we'll have a live stream after Sark speaks. We'll have coffee and football as usual in the morning as well. So we everything planned out, Rod, and any of you guys bring your questions tonight. We'll talk anything you guys want to talk about.
Yes, and we'll get into it. I see a question already that I'm a little excited about. Jerry, before we dive into some of the questions, we do have my former teammate,
yes,
as a sponsor of Talkin Ball. That actually gets me excited. And I don't have a lot of teammates that that I would endorse as a doctor, as a physician. But I would endorse Brett Robin, always one of my the smartest teammates I've been around, and one of the best teammates I've been around. And I'm happy to call him not only a member of the On Texas Football family, but also a doctor these days.
Yes, Dr. Robin, former Texas Longhorn running back, knows what it takes to stay in the game. And he's here for athletes of all ages, specializing in musculoskeletal health. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and total joint replacements. With convenient offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen, Dr. Brett Robin is accepting new patients now. If you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic specialist, give Dr. Robin a call at 512-856-1000 and get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love, which is very important in life.
All right. Thank you very much for that message from Dr. Brett Robin. And I got to say, I probably should go see Dr. Brett Robin. I got a couple issues, shoulder issues, some back issues. Yeah, got a few of those. So thank you very much for his ongoing support of On Texas Football. How about this one from Nathan? Quick question. It says, Jerry, looks like, I believe it's Richard Wesley.
Richard Wesley. Yep.
Wesley is going to take an official visit. Is he the top of the edge boards? It's a great question. I think that points us right in the direction that we wanted to go for talking ball.
Richard Wesley, a 27 reclass to 26. Top of the board. I don't know about that. He's really, really talented. This recruitment's going to play out, though. Look, he's going to an Oregon commitment. He committed May 10th. Happy birthday. I think that was my birthday, even I don't want to remember that nowadays. But he committed to Oregon May 10th. He's visiting Oregon June 6th. He's going to visit A&M. He's visiting June. We knew he was going to visit Texas. We just didn't know the date yet. He just announced that June 20th through 22nd, the last weekend for Texas. But here's the thing. He's still scheduled to go to Ohio State for an OV the August 30 weekend, the week of the Texas game. So this is a recruitment that's going to play out into the season. I expect this one to play out a while, honestly. And you look, these things change, but I'd be surprised if we're even really looking at a September decision here. It wouldn't shock me if it goes a little longer. He is definitely one of the edge guys on the board. And I think the edge board, Rod, as you watch Wesley here again, a 2027 guy that reclassed to 26. He's at the Sierra Canyon there in Chatsworth, California, obviously a school that LeBron James kids went to. Juju Watkins, a star basketball player for USC, and a number of big-time college football and basketball prospects in recent years. But a guy whose best football, I think, is way out in front of him. He's still really young, but he's very talented. But there's a really good edge prospects on the board. In that June 20th weekend, you'll also have Luke Wafel out of the Hun School, Princeton, which Texas is battling, Penn State, where his brother plays, and Ohio State there. June 13th, you have Drake Quinn from Greater Atlanta Christian in Norcross, Texas. I think feels pretty decent there, but we'll see. That official visitors list is a who's who. It's Notre Dame, it's Alabama, it's Tennessee. I mean, you name it. He's visiting Georgia for Drake Quinn as well. So, Notre Dame. I mean, that's a who's who visitors list of top defenses. And then obviously you have Kamari Brooks, who's very much a long shot, scheduled to come in the 13th. He's out of North Oconee in Georgia, and Jake Krull out of IMG, originally from Orlando, on the 13th. Then you have Jamarian Carlton, the lone in-state edge, right now scheduled for an official visit. He's coming in the 6th through 8th. There's also Landon Barnes at Duncanville, who made an unofficial visit recently, who could be an official visitor as well. So that Texas edge board taking shape. He asked who's number one on that board. I'm not sure that decision's been made yet.
Hey, Jerry, do you I got two questions here. One's about the different type. How big is this young man? How big?
6'5". I saw him in person. He's 6'5", 240-ish.
Okay. Seems like there are two different types of edge guys that they're trying like it's like the 2-point edge guy,
yes,
and then the 3-point edge guy.
Yeah, to your point, Rod, there's also Jarelyn McCoy out of Tupelo, who's a 6'6", 245-pound, kind of that hybrid edge 5.
Yeah.
There's Bryce Perry Wright. And I think Wesley falls into this category too. There's Bryce Perry Wright from Buford, who's coming in June 13th. He is 6'2" and change, about 265, is that hybrid edge 5.
Yeah.
So, Rod, to your point there, there's probably split down the middle between that and your traditional edge guy, and then that kind of hybrid 5 tech, head over the tackle, 3 tech type of guy long term.
Yep. Guy you can kind of move in different gaps. Little bit, depending on what package you have in there, NASCAR, different types of things. Okay, and the second question about reclassifying period.
Yeah.
Is it actually benefiting the I don't know if we have enough for sample size yet, because it feels like it's a really new thing. So maybe we don't have enough sample size to look at and go, no, this percentage of players, end up getting drafted high, whatever it is. Do you think it's a good idea to always reclassify? I know why they're doing it. I get it. You're trying to cash in while the laws are still very vague. and we're in this purgatory. So you got to do it before the house settlement comes in, and there are very strict parameters on who can do what. I get it. I know why they're reclassifying, and it's just the top guys that are doing it. Do you think your expertise, because you've been doing this a long time, is it benefiting the actual player to do it, or is it just a short-term cash grab?
Look, I think as long as, and there's very few guys who are actually that level who can get in on the cash grab, right? That can reclass and everybody wants. Mark Bowman, the tight end, Xavier Crowell. By the way, Matthew, if you could look up, somebody brought up, is Sark going to jump in a pool during Wesley's OV? If you could look up Richard Wesley's commitment to Oregon with Dan Lanning. I know Josie would love that in the chat. But Oregon fan Josie. But look, my take on the reclass is if your expectations are in line, I think it could be a beneficial thing if you're one of those few guys, not just financially, but you get the extra year in college. Now, if you're a player that comes in, you're like, not only am I reclassifying, but I want to go challenge for a starter's role. Maybe there's one or two guys that maybe it's at a running back, right? Maybe it's a position like that, but these guys are still behind. Development-wise, that year of development, that year of maturity. Now, I'll say this, though, Rod, some of the reclasses actually didn't become of age because maybe they were held back earlier, right? So they kind of reclass back the age that people think. That's happening in basketball. But I think as long as your expectations are where they need to be, I think it could be a really good thing. Now, I will say this. It scares me, the quarterbacks that do it, because one of the things that I've always said hurt Quinn Ewers was not being the leader of the South Lake team, the South Lake High School, and the South Lake community. He went and sat in what felt like purgatory. Here's Richard Wesley and Dan Lanning's commitment to Oregon May 10th. But Quinn had to feel like he was in purgatory. I mean, he was at Ohio State taking snaps as a walk-on, never playing. It was cold. It was lonely. This is Wesley's commitment to Oregon on the unofficial visit to Oregon.
There's one school, show me the most love, I guess it's where I'm going. You ready, Coach?
Let's get it. It's time, baby. Let's go.
This doesn't look like the commitment that sticks, by the way. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Hey,
I don't think that's his last commitment. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
I respect Dan Lanning, though. I respect it because, like I said, these days, you got to do what you got to do. I respect Dan Lanning. He's doing what he's got to do. You got to be. I always say sometimes you got to be a fool for love.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to be a fool for the recruit, man. You got to be acting fool for him. He wasn't whatever you do a dance in the living room, and let's do a dance, whatever it is.
Times have changed. Could you imagine Coach K doing a cannonball with Carlos Boozer back in the day to get a commitment? I can't really see that one.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I admire. I was like, no, man, the times are changing. Whatever the recruits want to do, let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. Good stuff. Let's get to Benjamin. Benjamin with a super chat. Thank you, Benjamin. We appreciate that very much. Says, guys, what position group is keeping you up late at night? Potential injury issues at wide receiver. Is Wingo and Moore really fully healthy? Offensive line experience or defensive line depth? Ooh, Benjamin. All right. Let's get to our anxiety.
Rod, I'm going to lead you down this path.
Let's go.
Last year, Texas could withstand a wide receiver injury because, even when Isaiah Bond went down, obviously Matthew Golden exceeded expectations, right? But you still had Silas Bolden coming in and out of the portal. You had enough experience depth at wide receiver. This year, and DeAndre Moore's coming off the redshirt year, right? But Ryan Wingo's a freshman. So this year, if one of those two guys who started that national semifinal go down, you don't have nearly the experience you had last year.
Yeah.
So wide receiver is the one position that needs to, I think, and nothing stays 100% healthy, needs to stay relatively healthy. Now, you got three guys that were starters in Power 4 football. I'm not sure. And look, Dalen McCutcheon had a good spring. Jamie French had a good spring. I think Khalik Lockett's best football is way out in front of him. Michael Terry the same. But then none of those receivers kind of have the buzz that Ryan Wingo had.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, man.
So Yeah, Parker Livingstone coming off the red shirt year, but it's still not the same buzz that DeAndre Moore had, where Moore was kind of like, okay, this guy, we're hearing behind the scenes, this guy could be a starter on this team. Boom, 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 have a breakthrough type of season. So that would be the one position that, maybe corner.
That other
Healthy as well.
Muhammad, whatever that is, whatever they're going to do in that secondary opposite Malik Muhammad, because if it's not a corner that they find that they trust, like nobody won the job in the spring, and that's not it. That's not a big issue. Like you shouldn't be freaking out about that. But if it's not Jalen Gilbo, and if Jalen Gilbo moves there, then you're worried about nickel. Then your anxiety kind of switches over. Well, what's the nickel? Is it Jelani McDonald? Then that's okay. That's great. I love Jelani McDonald. I think he's fantastic. And then that opens up kind of a void at safety because until Derek Williams comes along, who's that? So either way, there's a spot in the secondary that we don't ultimately know if we can trust yet.
Yeah.
And that worries me. We don't know if it depends on what they do. If they put Gilbo at nickel, then it's the corner spot opposite Malik Muhammad. If they put Gilbo at corner, I feel better about that. And it's like, well, who's playing nickel? If Jelani McDonald's playing safety, then it's like, okay, who's playing nickel? If Jelani McDonald's playing nickel, then who's going to play that safety spot early on? Ohio State, you got a first game of the season. Your secondary better be ready to play some of their best ball they play all year long.
Better be connected.
Yes, they better be, because you're paying the best wide receiving core.
You're going to play all season.
Yeah.
Getting that one out of the way week one.
Yeah. So you can't really afford to go in that game and have some growing pains and, oh, this guy needs to, he's going to learn on the fly kind of thing. Nah, you can't do that at Ohio State. You end up down both double digits early on in that game. So that I like to say the plan for Ohio State is not going to be the plan for like the start of the postseason for Texas. Right. I think the secondary will look very different in those things. Something that keeps me up late though, if you want to start talking about anxiety, Benjamin, like I love Arch. I think Arch is great, right? I think his sack avoidance is going to be much better. I've talked about his scrambling ability is going to add a cheat code to the offense for Texas. Love his deep ball. I recently talked about him on straight drop back situations. I think Jerry, we're not looking at what a strength and additive his straight drop back acumen is going to be. I'm talking about no screens, no play action pass, no RPO, just straight drop back. Those are tough situations. Usually come on third and long. He was amazing in those situations. Now against bad competition, Mississippi State and ULM, but he was really impressive on straight drop back situations. Usually for Quinn, that's when you saw some of the liabilities in Quinn's skill set. But this is what worries me. The pressure. Everybody knows the term, the analytic pressure to sack, basically pressure to sack percentage of plays where pressure ends up resulting in a sack. And Quinn was pretty bad. He was around 22, 23%. Everybody's got a different definition of pressure. So ultimately, whether a pressure ends up in a sack, those numbers could be a little off depending on what platform you're looking at. But the pressure to sack numbers for Arch, they're pretty high. He's actually, Arch, you go look at it, his pressure to sack percentage is a little higher than I would like. I think it's actually probably close to about 25%.
He's a deep ball hunter.
He's a deep ball hunter. And it's not worrying. So his pressure to sack percentage may be a little bit high. And I think that worries me because what if the offensive line isn't as good at pass protection early as we thought? Takes them a little bit of while to figure that out. And you have a young Arch Manning, deep ball hunting, holding the ball a little bit. I wonder, that makes me wonder just a little bit.
Well, and that, I think that's the thing, Rod. It's a great point. We talk about it all the time with Arch. I really think this is the biggest hurdle for him as a young quarterback. And every young quarterback has some hurdle.
Yep.
Is deep late and late middle, holding on to the ball too long. Oh, I feel the pressure. I got to get it out of my hand. And a lot of times those are deep late middle, and those are interceptions against good teams. And because he's such an aggressive vertical thrower and Sark's an aggressive vertical play caller, we're going to see that once again with Arch now. Arch has got to be very mindful of that because I think that's the one area that will trip him up, as it does any quarterback.
Exactly.
Has that mindset is deep late and late middle as young quarterbacks because those are interceptions.
Those are interceptions. Exactly. And then that down on that overconfidence, arrogance. Oh, I can do it. No,
I got this throw.
Nobody exactly. I can make that throw. So that worries me a little bit because, like I said, I looked at his pressure to sack numbers and I was like, he's going to be better because he's so athletic. But oftentimes, mobility can lead quarterbacks to believe, have that overconfidence, and that they can do more than is possible outside the pocket. And I didn't realize it, but his pressure to sack numbers are actually higher than Quinn's. Just small sample size,
right?
But they got to clean that up. All right. There you go, Benjamin.
And here's the great thing for our kind of other side of that, Sark has all off season to talk to Arch about that. They know that. They have the same numbers you have, Rod.
Yeah, exactly.
Sark's going to have to call plays under with the mindset of I can't have Arch, my young quarterback, holding the ball too long, especially game 1 of the season on the road.
Yeah. They got Pro Football Focus has his pressure to sack percentage at 26.9 in 2024. That probably would have been one of the highest numbers in the country, if not the highest. Yeah. All right. Getting back to it here. I know we got some questions. We'll try to knock these out really quickly. All right. How about this one from Roger? Seems like Texas' priority in recruiting is defense. Seems like a 40-60 ratio, more defense and offense recruits commits. Roger, I'll say my take on this was that Texas, because Sark is an offensive guy, the construction of the roster started on offense. Like give me my offensive linemen, my big humans, give me my wide receivers. And now I bet the deal was, hey, PK, we're gonna build your defense and we'll give you a little bit more priority and emphasis after I build my offense, because I'm the head coach and I'm the play caller. And I don't know if he said that, but I think to me that's what it looks like when I look at the roster construction.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is about this is the offensive line. You play 7, maybe 8 guys if you have a great offensive line in the game. Defensive front, you're playing 14 guys. I mean, you're probably digging into 8 interior defensive linemen, if it's 5 snaps a game for Sharma or Myron Charles. But your edges, you're playing 4 to 6 of those guys. So you have depth on your offensive line in your program, but you don't necessarily play that depth like you do on your defensive front. So I'm always a proponent of over-recruiting defensive line. And I think to a certain extent, Texas did that on the interior to D-line in the portal this year. And I'm not saying over-recruit it. Maybe they did by 1 guy, but look, they got, 5 guys out of the portal on the defensive line?
Yeah, it's crazy.
So they made sure that they had the depth to play 6 to 8 guys every Saturday they felt like it on the interior defensive line. And then you get to the edge position, and they tried to go after an edge. David Bailey went to Texas Tech, so they were going to take him if they could have got him. And maybe that had to do with Colton Vossick's injury and the Trey Moore move to linebacker, although Moore can spin right down if you want it that way, if they want to make that move. But edge, you're going to play more of your depth on the defensive line. I've always been a proponent of over-signing in a class by 1 on the defensive line every year. Maybe it's 2 nowadays because of the portal guys just transfer out. But you got, especially in this league, guys, I really believe you have to over-sign on the D-line every year.
Yeah, no position rotates, to your point, Jerry, as much as D-line. Offense or defense.
Yeah.
Sark doesn't rotate his receivers that much. Once he finds his circle of trust, quarterback is quarterback. O-line, you want continuity, so you're not rotating a lot of guys on O-line for Texas. Why tight end ends up being 2 guys most of the time for Sark. Then you look at defense, the DBs, once they found their group, those DBs didn't rotate much. And Anthony Hill didn't leave the field. So to your point, yeah, that's the group, whether it be D tackle or edge, that they're rotating more than any other group, I would think. All right. Good question, Roger. How about this one from Parlito? Estimating that Texas will play Arkansas Aggies and OU in 26. We have to think SEC will schedule Tennessee and Ole Miss.
100%, Rob, because it's their only chance to ever do this.
I didn't think about that. Probably.
I think Tennessee will be in Austin and Ole Miss will be on the road. Arch Manning is going to start a college game in Oxford.
And there's no formula, right? They don't, because the NFL has like a formula. Supposedly they come up with. Does the SEC do they talk about their formula or whatever for scheduling. They just make sure that it lines up. They don't care about the formula.
I could be off on that, but I don't know what they're for. I don't know if they have a formula, but I can almost guarantee
the formula is going to. If you're saying the formula will guarantee that Arch will play Ole Miss at Tennessee.
Yes, and I think it'll be at Ole Miss, and they'll have some big day for Archie Manning around that game and Eli, and it's going to be I don't think Arch Manning's going to the NFL draft without playing either of those and playing at Ole Miss.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think you're right. Whatever
he asked, who would the other 3 teams be? Now, here's the question: that may go to 9 conference games in 26. So we may be talking about adding another game to that. Will Missouri come on the schedule? Will South Carolina come on the schedule? It'll just be a straight swap. Will Auburn come on the schedule? That's going to be the question, or will it be Alabama? Who's going to replace Georgia? Who's going to replace Florida? I think Tennessee kind of replaces Florida. Ole Miss probably replaces Vandy. I think Texas is going to have a tougher conference schedule in 26 and 27, more looking like an Oklahoma type schedule. So it'll either be Alabama. Well, and there's LSU. So it'll be, if you go to 9 games, I think you'll get LSU for sure.
Okay. All right. I like that. That was a good question. Good point, Paulito. Getting back to it. Super chat. Justin, thank you for the super chat. Always jumps to the front of the line. We appreciate that very much. Says, when's the last time Texas took a player that y'all looked at and questioned the addition? It's been a while for me. That's
a tough one to answer on a live stream, first of all.
No name.
Yarbrough's trying to get me in trouble here.
Don't name anybody. Just did you question an addition in a 25 class or the 24 class or 23 class? Did you I don't know about that one. Was that one? I'm pretty sure for Jerry's, I'm going to say this. Jerry's pretty meticulous and critical and detailed oriented. I'm going to say there was one for you at least in every class, just because that's just the nature of Jerry more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think in 24, I think in 24 there were a couple of guys, but look, I also trust these guys to develop players. In the past, you didn't trust the player development.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you don't trust the player development, and I can say one because he's not here anymore, was Freddie DuBose, just because was he ever going to be healthy? He had a major knee injury. That was one for me. I can say that because he's gone. There was one other in that class. Obviously, when you date back a little bit, but Sark and them were finding their footing. I'll honestly say this, in 23, I didn't think Peyton Kirkland, I thought he loved recruiting more than he loved football. I'm just going to say it. And I think that's kind of panned out. And that doesn't mean I'm always right. I'm not. Yeah. You asked me a couple of guys, and those guys are gone, which is always interesting. But I'll say this, the number 1 class last year, I just went through this. I mean, I'm looking here at this class right now. Even though Smith Orogbo's got injured senior year, I loved him. Love him. I love his upside. A lot of people had issues with KJ Lacey because of his size. I think that's going to be wrong. I think KJ's really good.
Yeah.
Emery Winston, some people worried about Emery Winston.
Undersized tight end. That's a good point.
But he had a really good spring.
Yeah.
I like the offensive line takes. They're all interior players. Those guys are on 3-year outside of Nick Brooks. They're all on 2- and 3-year development curves. I love the 25 class. I mean, I like all those guys, man. I think they did and that doesn't mean all of them are going to make it at Texas. They're not. There's going to be guys that transfer out. But look, there's players transferring out and starting at other Power 4 schools right now. So, if there was somebody who was injured, you kind of wondered about, Peyton Kirkland. I thought he liked the recruiting part more than football. And that always scares me on the offensive line because that's a blue collar position.
Yeah. You're
out there loving recruiting.
Yeah.
If you see guys that love the recruiting part more than being the offensive lineman part and just kind of keeping their head down, and they love the whole social media part, like they're acting like a defensive back on or wide receiver, your skill guy, sorry, Rod, on social media and recruiting.
I get it.
Offensive lineman, I'm not sure that's always the best thing in the world.
Yeah, that's a good point, though. Justin, that's a good question. But I think it's fewer and fewer. that you question in recruiting these days because of the
And Rod, like I said, when you're developing players,
you let it.
that really keeps you from saying, "Oh man, I don't know about this guy," because you're like, okay, these guys are developing players, so let's see what they do with this guy in 3 years because he does have potential.
Yeah, and to that point, I've said, and I know they keep up with it. I don't know for a fact, but it would just make too much sense, and they're too buttoned up. You got to keep up with where your transfers are going and how they're doing at their next location, because that ultimately will help you with your information, your data, and if your evaluations are accurate in your player evaluation. If a guy still ends up going somewhere and starting somewhere, going to the league, to me, even though it didn't happen in your system, at least you still hit and we're like, yeah, we had him as an NFL player. It happened with us. All right, back to the questions. Horn 7 says, who are the top assistant coaches on the staff today? Coach Akita's in that conversation. Kyle Flood, Jeff Banks. And they got a lot of newer guys on the staff. Kenny Baker.
Because he's a high level pass rush coach and fits the modern game.
Okay.
I think the high level pass rush guys that are in college are difference makers. Because I mean, remember, he walks into Texas last year, and look, Bo Davis is a great coach.
Yes.
Pete Jenkins, he's from the Pete Jenkins school, right? Great run game coach, great motivator of guys, right? Kenny Baker comes in and coaches pass rush with the edges and interior D linemen, and you're one at Texas.
And you tie the sack record.
That's a pretty big job to walk into.
Yeah.
I think Kenny Baker's really good in pass rush. When he was hired, one of the top D-line instructors said he's a great pass rush coach.
Mm-hmm.
But Akina, for sure. Kyle Flood, for sure. I think he's such a great communicator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
they got legit that.
Jackson's a really good nuances coach for sure. Those guys know what they're doing at that. They have a high level understanding of the wide receiver position.
Yeah. I like Nansen. I'm a Nansen fan. I like Nansen before he even came to Texas. I like him now too. All right, good question there, Horn 7. Cisco DS. Out of the transfers, which is the one you are expecting to have the biggest impact?
It's a good question, Rod.
Honestly, it is a trigger. I want to say the one I want to say is Jack Indries, because I'm a Jack Indries fan. I think he's so compatible with Sark's offense. Can almost be a clone of what Gunnar Helm has done. But it probably would be Mason Shipley.
It's a good point, because you were a field goal away from winning the SEC last year.
And honestly, it could be Baumeister. It could be him.
Because you couldn't flip the field and use your defense and maximize your defense last year.
Exactly. Your defense was all-time great. And honestly, most of the time you got no help from special teams.
Somebody wants you to put on a helmet, by the way. Hey, but Rod, so think about this. What can your pass rush be if you have a punter that can pin somebody and flip the field?
Exactly.
What kind of pressure can you put on an offense?
Yeah. Honestly, yeah. So honestly, it's gonna be the punter and the kicker, guys. That's not the sexy answer, Cisco, but that's the football answer. That's the one that Coach Shipley would give you if he was on here with you.
Because the reality is, when you're up at Ohio State, what are two things that could happen in that game, which you could be talking about in the post game, Rod? The punter flipped the field, kept your defense from having their back against the wall, and your kicker made the winning kick at the end, or made a key field goal in the fourth quarter. I mean, that experience of those guys, boy, Mason Shipley's, I mean, outside of Arch, he's the second, he might have the second most pressure of anybody on this team next year.
Yes.
Because what kicking, how Auburn struggled at the end of the year, can't have replicas of that this year. That's a lot of pressure on a transfer kicker.
It is. That's a good point. And you got big games, man. Big games. And
you got 3 tough road games.
Yeah. At Georgia. Yeah, it's a good point. At Florida. Yeah. Big road game. At Ohio State. But no, I like Cisco. I like Indries too. And Murad Watson is.
I think he's gonna be tremendous.
I think his best contribution maybe because these guys are multiple years of eligibility left at Texas. So I'm not talking about guys who are going to have a 1-year impact. We're going to be talking about the guys who have a couple of years of impact. All right. Thank you, Cisco, for that. Keep going here. Doug, good evening, gentlemen. What's the deal with wide receiver? Oh!
Hey, Rod, I had to put the lampshade on this morning because you weren't here. We're going to let you put the helmet on this one.
Didn't see it there. Nope, that's my bad. Aloha, traveler. Sorry, brother. I'm going to get it here for you. Boom. Shit. Here we go. Boom. I'm buttoned up. Here we go. All right. Aloha. The last few years, there have been aspects of the team we didn't expect to be good and were concerned. That turned out to be great. He said, what players that we weren't thinking much about now that could be a huge plus for this team this year? Thank you, Aloha Traveler. God bless you.
Thank you, Aloha Traveler.
That's very kind of you. Just made my holiday weekend.
Joseph, I'm not at home, so I don't have the lamp. I don't have the lampshade.
I didn't. So you really put on a lampshade for us?
Oh, this morning, yeah. I put on the lampshade for a $50 super chat because I don't have a Texas helmet.
Oh, we got to get you like at least a replica from the co-op.
I think the lampshade's working.
Okay.
This is a great question, Aloha Traveler.
It is a great question.
I'll say this, Rod. I'm going to lead you into this. I thought secondary last year was unbelievable as far as communication, playing together, a player making a change from nickel to corner and winning a Thorpe. Had to deal with an injury of a starter in Derek Williams. I thought secondary, and I'll tell you the other one last year was running back. After you lost Cedric Baxter, have Trey Wisner step up through JT, who had trouble holding on to the football. So really, your number 1 and 2 guys going into the season, neither one of those guys ended up being your number 1. Your number 3 back ended up being your number 1. Oh, boy, I think we have the –
Oh, give it to me.
Who wants the party?
Well done. I like it. I like creativity, brother. I love it. That's fantastic.
That's awesome, Matthew. But so running back, your number 3 back ended up being 1,000-yard rusher and your number 1 back last year. That rarely happens.
To me, and I agree with you about running back, by the way, Trey Wisner. He's in that conference. Tight end. Statistically, last year, guys, that was the greatest. It might have been the greatest tight end season in Texas football history. It's crazy to think that because it was Gunnar Helm who came after JT. And our concern was, they don't have the athleticism. They don't have, I'm speaking on me. I say that. I said this. I said I didn't think he could go out there and just win one-on-ones consistently.
Right.
And I don't know if he was going to be explosive enough. Turns out one of the best tight ends in the country when it came to yak yardage. He was phenomenal. He was hurdling guys and mossing guys at the catch point. So to me, that was also one of the most surprising elements. And I do think it was just foreshadowing what the tight end position is going to be under Sark.
Yeah.
And for a few years, we know the tight end position was an endangered species at Texas after great years with, Bo Scaife and Dave Thomas and Jermichael Finley. I think the tight end position depends on what they do in recruiting going forward. But based on what Jerry's told me and talking to CJ, it's athletically getting freakier. And that's crazy to say even after a 5-star guy, 5-star athlete in JT Sanders been there. But it's getting freakier athletically. And I think ultimately the productivity we see at it, I don't know if you'll get more targets to tight end because they get a lot of targets. You're talking about 70-something, 80-something target tight end position, somewhere around there. But I think the distribution of it is going to change where now you'll get 2 tight ends who are Gunnar Helm, JT-like at the same time. Remember, Gunnar Helm was starting with JT, but he was secondary and he got very few targets. You're talking about an 85 to 15% target share difference between tight end 1 and tight end 2. Yeah. But I think ultimately that is going to change. I think now you're going to get maybe a 40-60 or 65-35. I think you're going to, like Warren Davis last year was a non-factor essentially in the passing game. I think that is going to change at the tight end position going forward. Now, that may be this year with a Jordan Washington coming in and the back injuries. It could be. But I do think that's going to change too. So that's something I'm looking forward to. I think it could be a surprise this year for us going forward.
What about for this year? So this season, I'm thinking of 2 guys, and this is no slide on Andre Kojo, but for Texas, it needs to be the right tackle. So we're going to say Brandon Baker right now. And Neto. Now, Cole Hudson has a big job because he's starting center for the first time, and his first start at center is at Ohio State. And that's going to be wild for him. but he also has a lot of experience. But Brandon Baker at right tackle, assuming he is the number one guy, which he is now, and Nato need to play really well for Texas, especially out of the gate early on. And that's first starts. Their first career starts, and Cole Hudson's first start at center is against Ohio State. So that's got something to it. I would say the other one, if Texas could get a healthy season out of Colton Vasek.
Oh, that's good. That's
because
good.
I think the guy's really good, but we just can't see it because he's just struggled so much with injury. But Texas needs him to have a healthy season to kind of be that combo guy with Ethan Burke. And if they can get that from him, I think Colton Vasek will be one of the most productive players on this defense statistically if he can have a healthy season, which he just hadn't had since junior year in high school.
No, that's good.
He played through it his senior year in high school, but he was still injured, and he's had the injury bug. So that's a big one for me, Rod. Is if you could get a healthy season out of him, I think that guy would put up 40, 45 tackles and 7 sacks. I think he's that level player if he could ever have a healthy 12, 13 games.
No, to your point, Jerry, I went and looked at havoc rates individually, player havoc rates. I believe it's either a summer school I did a few weeks back. He has one of your highest havoc rates on defense. Like it's one of the highest. It's in the top, I believe, even last season, even though very small sample size. He was easily in your top 4.
Yeah.
Highest havoc rates on the defense. Crazy. But like you said, you need a larger sample size of that. But thank you, Aloha Traveler. That's very kind of you and great question as well. All right. We do have another super chat. Splendid Daddy here. Splendid Daddy says, do y'all think Arch will look like Quinn did against Bama in Austin? Sark has had all off season to prepare. The script will be on point.
I don't know about that because Nick was in man and was going to play man. And that was Quinn at his most confident I thought he ever was as a Texas Longhorn before that injury. He was not missing throws in that first however long he was in the game. I can't remember how many minutes that actually was. He might have thrown for 400 yards that day if he didn't get the dirty hit. Because the ball he threw, the Worthy, the ball he threw, I think it was the Whittington.
Beautiful.
He came out of the gates on fire.
Mm-hmm.
I think Patricia's going to throw a lot more different looks at Arch in this game. Rod, you've studied Patricia more than I have.
No, you're right. And that's a great point about Bama playing a lot of man. And Sark knew that because Sark knows Saban really well.
Yeah.
And Saban's always been on the record for saying he believes man cover one is the best defensive player.
And with those 2 edge rushers, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Exactly. Right. And that's the easiest defense for a quarterback to read. I see man, it's ball placement after that. I'm good. I already know what I'm dealing with. And to your point, though, Splendid Daddy, about Sark, I do believe the script will be on point. Listen, I think there are 2 factors that contribute to this take, right? That Quinn's best games were those big non-conference games, the Bama in 2022, Bama in 2023, and Michigan in 2024. I think health, number one, because he's healthy. And when you get a completely healthy Quinn, he's a different player. And I think also that you get that script and that preparation and game planning. I think Sark may be the best in the country at it. Like he's in the conversation to be the best in the country at game planning and scripting. And that Lincoln Riley's in that conversation too. He struggles a little bit when adjusting second half, adjustments and winning the battle of the adjustments and actually, figuring out in the chess match, right, to anticipate what the opponent is doing at times. And he's going to get better at that because he already is. But preparation and game planning, I think those games, because he's got 3 months of it basically that he's done, show you that he's one of the best in the country at it. I mean, he had a NFL defensive coordinator basically with Michigan who essentially was flummoxed. Like he just
had tremendous defensive players back on that team, by the way.
Well, I mean, how many 4 NFL draft picks on that defense or more? Yeah. So I don't worry about
rounders on the defensive line. Josiah Stewart was a 2nd rounder off the edge. Will Johnson was
tackles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they'll be ready. I think you're right about Arch playing really well. The offense will look different though.
And it's going to be interesting here. Ohio State's going to try to bait and Arch into throwing it deep because they think they have the athletes to make the plays. Yep. This isn't San Jose State or UTEP or Sam Houston where they're concerned about every Texas guy getting behind them and it's 7 points every time and it's 40-0 at halftime. Ohio State's going to try to bait him into throwing the ball deep at times. They are.
Do you remember
He's
what
a young
game
quarterback making his first start on the road? You damn well know they're going to try to bait him.
To your point, young quarterbacks on the road. Who did a great coach job of baiting Quinn into that on the road as a young quarterback? Gundy, Oklahoma State. Jim it wasn't Nose actually. Was it Nose? It was.
I think it was his last year before he went to Ohio State.
Might have been gone already. But either way, Gundy. Remember that game on the road? What did Quinn have? Like 14 overthrows, something like that? That game on the road? Ton of them. They were all baiting them. Yeah. Those long shots. And you're right. They had the guys to keep up. That was a really good Oklahoma State defense. All right, good question there, Split the Daddy. Appreciate it. All right, Jerry, let's thank our sponsor, Brett Robin, just one more time. I know we're getting close to the end of our live stream, and we'll take a couple of more questions before we end things. But first, let's thank Dr. Brett Robin, my former teammate, one of the smartest teammates that I've ever had, and I think that's why he's a doctor these days.
There you go, Dr. Robin, a former Texas Longhorn running back, who told the great story about playing an A&M Texas game at A&M. If you could go back in the archives and find that how loud that actually was. He knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages. He specializes in musculoskeletal health. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and total joint replacements. That doesn't sound fun, but sometimes you have to do it. With the offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen, Dr. Robin is accepting new applications and patients now. If you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic specialist, give Dr. Robin a call at 512-856-1000 and get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love.
All right, thank you for that, Jerry, and thank you to Dr. Brett Robin. All right, couple of questions. We're gonna try to go rapid fire and get some of these in. Doug says, "Good evening, gentlemen. What's the deal with wide receiver Caden Finley? I heard he's leaning towards Texas, but his mom wants him at Notre Dame. What's going on?"
I don't know if I buy that. I think the decision Caden's having to make is, does he want to go off and kind of blaze his own path? Or does he want to be a legacy at Texas? I would push back on this a little, Doug. At one point, Caden himself has been leaning to Notre Dame. Does that mean I think he's going to go to Notre Dame? I've always said when people started putting in the picks, I was like, I'm not going there. It's a long way until early July when he makes the decision. And that was months ago. That was after January Junior Day. People started putting in Notre Dame picks. But from talking to people close to the recruitment, it really does come down to this for Caden. I really believe this. Do you want to go blaze your own path and do your own thing? Or do you want to, and you say follow in Pop's footsteps and go to Texas. That kind of sounds bad because he's a different position, but be a legacy at the school where your dad was a great player. Some kids want to do it, Rod. Some kids don't. And there's two in this class, Jalen Lott and Caden Finley, that Texas is recruiting with everything they have. They want these guys. If they don't get either one of these guys, or one of them goes their way and one that goes the other way, it's not because Texas didn't want them. They love both of these guys and they want them in this class.
All right. Good stuff there. How about this one? Two of these Michael Terry related. One from Ezekiel, one from Zane. Ezekiel first says, how has Michael Terry's development been so far for his size and athleticism? Him being a hybrid around the ball is interesting. And then Zane puts out there as well, can Michael Terry develop into Jeremiah Smith?
No.
Speed to weight ratio is crazy. But it ain't Jeremiah Smith crazy. That dude is that's a freak of nature.
Yeah, who's played wide receivers pretty much his whole life too.
Yeah.
Michael Terry is transitioning to try to play wide receiver. Look, I think Michael Terry's got talent. He can be a red zone threat. He can be a 50-50 ball winner. But I just think he needs a lot of time because this is a guy who has never really concentrated on playing a wide receiver. And there's a lot of nuances. There's a lot to learn. That's a difficult offensive scheme to learn. I think the best thing for Michael Terry is kind of a year to really develop as a wideout. And I'm not saying he's going to redshirt, but if he did and he was going to really, Texas wanted him to give it a go at wide receiver, that wouldn't be the best or the worst scenario for him, because that is a big learning curve for a guy that played a little bit of everything in high school, that never really concentrated on that position, especially at this level where Texas wants to be and who they're playing. I think it's easier said than done if you haven't been playing wide receiver a long time and been with even the guys, if you'd been with a wide receiver trainer for 4 years in high school and kind of worked with you on refining your route running and your understanding of coverages, even things such as that. Michael Terry's kind of green with all that stuff as a wide receiver. So I think the big thing is he's got a lot of talent, but I think the big thing is not to rush that talent.
All right. Last question here. We'll end on this one from Freshwater Cajun. He says, "Do you think in the Ohio State game, Sark will avoid Caleb Downs like he did with those interior D linemen for Michigan?" I don't necessarily think this will be tougher to do. By the way, at least you know where the D tackles are.
Yeah,
know where they are at all times. They weren't moving those guys around very much. They move Caleb Downs around the formation a lot. They sometimes run that 3 high safety look. Now, I don't know if he's going to run Jim Knowles' defense, which also Sark doesn't know.
Well, see, who did Texas go after? It was his first big game. They went after Downs in man at Alabama.
Yes, they did.
He didn't play as much man at Ohio State last year.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. They had him as like a rogue defender at times, roaming.
Yes. Texas hunted him because he was a freshman at the time, very talented, but playing man in that game.
Yeah,
I don't think you're going to see him play a ton of man in this game.
Sark will test anybody in man.
Right.
He will. Look at Clemson last. I mean, he'll test anybody in man coverage. He don't get. Remember, he tested Alabama in 2022. Young Quinn Ewers. You're like, second year Xavier Worthy. Let's go man to man coverage. I don't give a damn. We're going. Sark will. If you're gonna play man to man, Sark is gonna test it every time. So it'll be tougher to avoid Caleb Downs because you don't actually know where he's going to be from down to down. Easier to move him around. But Sark will have a game plan for him. And he'll probably have a way to try to use Caleb Downs' aggressiveness against him.
And by the way, if Ohio State plays Downs in a bunch of man and lets Sark run him out of plays, that's not smart as a D coordinator. They need to keep Downs out of those positions.
Yeah, that's what Jim Knowles did. Jim Knowles would run that inverted look with the 3 high safeties and have him as the inverted defender, and literally would have him essentially, I almost have him as a roaming defender.
Right.
As a free spy defender who could come down to the front. He could drop back. You never knew what he was going to do him down and down. That's when he's at his best.
Yeah, no doubt.
We got a super chat here to end on. Sorry about that, Aaron. I missed this super chat. I apologize. Just came in. Says, what player on defense do you think is going to take the next big step? What about offense? That's good. Defense. It's got to be, if it's on defense, the next big step, because honestly, it's hard to say that for Colin Simmons because they got him as the number 1 edge rusher, edge defender in the country. Anthony Hill's considered the number 1 linebacker right now returning. I'm going to go with, it's got to be Malik Muhammad. It's got to be him. If he doesn't take the next step, then you got 2 question marks in that secondary. Whoever the corner is, obviously Malik Muhammad, or whoever the nickel is, if they put Gilbo there, but also, you can't afford to have 2 liabilities like that in your secondary. Then you're going all the way back to 2023.
Yeah.
Multiple liabilities in the secondary. We see how that worked out. And you're going to play better quarterbacks this season. So I'm going to say it's got to be Malik. He's got to give you consistency there. And then if you have an uncertainty or a void somewhere else in secondary, you can scheme around that. Can't scheme around 2 weaknesses in secondary. You can scheme around 1. You can.
So I had 3 guys in mind for different reasons. That Manny was one of them. Somebody brought up another one, Jelani McDonald. And then I had Alex January. I think Alex January is going to be the guy that played limited, that makes a big jump as a disruptive 3 for Texas on defense. And I think Jelani, that's a big one for Texas. They need to take that next step because he's a little different height, weight, speed ratio to him. He's one of those guys who could come out of nowhere and with a big year end up being a second, third round level guy. And if you got second, third round NFL level play from him, then you may not miss Makuba as much as you think you are right now going into the season. Offensively, it needs to be Neto.
Mm,
I mean, they need to move people on the interior this year more.
that's good.
They need to move people on the interior. I think this is huge for Arch and Sark to be able to run the ball more effectively, guard, center, guard this year.
I like
That's
that.
going to take some of the pressure off of Arch and Sark from a play calling standpoint.
I like that. Next big step for me on offense, I'll take Wingo. He's got to.
That's true. That's a good one. That's great.
He's so good.
He needs to be a first round level guy.
Yes, yeah, he's so good that I got to see it materialize, and we saw it. By the way, we saw flashes. And he's a freshman. We saw flashes. I got to see it consistently in stretches, and I think we will. I think he's that good. All right, thank you, Aaron, for that question, and thank you for the super chat. Very kind of you, guys. I apologize for not getting to more of the questions because there's so many good ones here. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them here tonight, but I promise you, if you direct them to the gentleman, Jerry being one of them, for coffee and football tomorrow morning at 8:15, they'll be more than happy to answer some of those, and I'll be around for the live stream tomorrow at 7:15 tomorrow with myself. Jeff Howe's going to join us, as well as E. Hogan, and that'll be at 7:15 p.m. tomorrow. So 8:15 a.m. you got coffee and football with Jerry and Bobby. 7:15 p.m. you got me, Jeff, and E. Hogan. So if we missed any of your questions, I apologize. We'll get to them tomorrow. Just throw him out there to the gang. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. He's the real MVP. Can't do it without him. Jerry, thank you very much for allowing me.
Rod.
Get in on Talking Ball. I had too much fun. I think I went way too long, but for you guys, because it's always it flies by when we're having so much fun. Thank you again to our sponsor, Dr. Brett Robin. We really appreciate his ongoing support, and thank you to all you guys for joining us on a holiday edition. Once again, happy Memorial Day out there, and please think about those who made the ultimate sacrifice for this great country whenever you get a chance. Thanks to Matthew, and for Jerry, and for Dr. Brett Robin. I'm Lifetime Local and Rod Babers. Until next time, Look Mornings.